Today I finally taken time to try the idea I've been thinking of for ages. Root weaving. We newspaper weavers have found it from wonderful mistress of weaving, Елена Ломохина. I've been admiring her works for quite a while, but for some reason I thought this technique to be too laborious until I faced her profile at vk.com website the other day. I was amazed by the diversity, neatness and decoration of her works. So I was inspired to finally try and get to know this new technique. Well, my first attempts have failed, so I believe it is worthwhile shooting a tutorial since one of the following attempts has finally succeeded. It has made me understand the principle, and I know that video tutorial is the easiest way to master the technique for most of you. That's why we are shooting this tutorial in order to share our experience. I will share the links to the masters who inspired me. As for those who haven't tried this technique yet, I hope they will find my experience useful. A few words about the material. Based on my experience, I've concluded that such thin tubes made of glossy booklets are perfect for this technique. They are thin, about 3 mm in diameter. Well, I've tried other materials too. Let me share all my experience with different types of material. Take a look, please. I've got such paper. I realize very few of you may have it, so let me just show you to give you an idea. I like the result. It's kind of lacy, as if embroidered. The paper is thin and nice to work with. As well, I've tried rolling thicker tubes of similar paper of brown color. The result is quite satisfying for bigger items. But most of all, I like working with thin tubes like this. These items have been woven with the thin tubes like this made of glossy booklets. Take a look, please. The work is fine and I like the result better. Yesterday, while getting prepared for the coming tutorial, I tried weaving with such tubes. They are made of advertising paper, but the paper is thicker and more rigid. Well, it has the right to exist too. For example, if you'd like to weave a large box, it is faster to weave with the tubes like this, and more messy weaving is okay in this case. Some tubes are too rigid. I use them as a base. The more flexible ones I used for wrapping the tubes of the base. These tubes were made quite long ago, and until now I had no idea where to use them. Now I found application for them too. So, I recommend, as well as more experienced weavers do, using such thin tubes made of glossy paper. A few words about the tools I use. First of all, you will need a sewing awl. In case you've got none, you can use a barbecue skewer or a chopstick with a sharpened end. However, since the idea has got me interested and I realize that I'm going to continue working with the technique, my dad has made such a tool specifically for this purpose, with a particular diameter and the end which is not too sharp to avoid any injury. Because the awls available for sale have a longer needle and they are too sharp, so you can easily scratch your fingers while working. That's why I've got this tool made specifically for me. But anyway, such a tool as barbecue skewer can be used for this purpose as well. Besides, I use the so-called dragon glue, polymeric universal adhesive. Because without it, you can destroy the previous coils while performing the following ones. Here is a clear example why I've started using glue while weaving. At first, let's get to know the simplest example to begin with. Roll a tube round a pan. Make a few coils. I weave in this direction. My tubes are directed rightward. Then I take the next tube, soften it a bit and insert it inward. Having watched quite a few videos on root weaving, I found out that I have a bit different manner of weaving. Anyway, the more tutorials there are, the better. Because after watching many videos, everyone is likely to get the technique most suitable for themselves. Well, it concerns the direction of weaving as well. For me personally, it is the easiest way of weaving. I've got used to it, so the process is going rather fast. So the first row is finished. I've got 6 coils. In the second row, I've departed from the original technique a bit, because the beginning is usually the most challenging stage, and I used to give up working at the following step. Well, actually, I'm supposed to lead a tube through the coil and one of the rows. Further, it is going to be easier, however, at the initial stage it is a bit too difficult. That's why I just lead a tube through the coil, lay the tube of the base. As for the working tube, I lead it through the following coil. In order to lead it through with ease, you've got to prepare a gap for it. Don't get scared by the laborious and challenging initial stage. The first stages are going to be much easier. You just have to be patient. Tubes made of newspaper would not bear so much stress and so many twists. Glossy paper tubes are much stronger. It's time to lengthen the tube. In order to connect 2 tubes, you have to insert one tube into another very deeply. Cut the end at a very sharp angle in order to be able to insert a tube deep enough. Drop some dragon glue, insert the tube deeply, press it with my fingers thoroughly, and soften. Let's lengthen the second tube too. When you start working, please get to know recommendations by other weavers. Just recently I found out that Lena Lamokhina uses newspaper tubes as a base and glossy paper tubes as working tubes. I haven't tried yet, but I believe it's up to you to find your perfect technique. Well, I do understand why she does it this way, because a glossy tube gets pressed. Take a look, please. Continue in the same very way. Lead the tube through the coil only. I soften the tube up to this point. I don't soften the very end. Let it be sharp and rigid in order to go through the gap easily. Everything goes well so far. Once again. Take a look, please. Here I can lead the tube through the coil and the first row simultaneously already. Look, I make a gap and lead it through. That's all. Now I'm passing on to the second row, where I'm going to perform the actions subject to repetition in every following row. Take a look, please. Do you see the point of wrapping? It is where I insert an awl. Pop and turn. Pop and turn. Pop and turn. And continue this way. The point of widening is coming soon. It is where we are supposed to apply a technique a bit different from normal weaving. Now, when I see that the intervals between the coils are getting bigger, in order to keep weaving neat and dense, I have to perform widening of the row. How do I do? I just make 2 coils instead of 1. And again, lead the tube through the previous row. Distribute the coils. 1, 2. Again, 1, 2. Make a gap. Take a look again, please. The coil in the previous row, the tube goes through smoothly. It is the very moment when the tube is getting tousled, another peculiarity of this technique. I cut the tube at the very point of gluing, as I know this is the most rigid point of the tube. This trick allows making a tousled tube usable again. One and 2. That's all. Now perform lengthening once again and continue weaving. I've already got a circle like this. Well, this type of weaving is much different from the ones I've used too, in many ways. The tube's quality is different, the remainders look much different, and the marks on your fingers remain in different points. Well, let me share one more piece of advice which can be useful if your tubes are not rigid enough. You can cut the edge, press the end, and make a kind of a hollow with your nail, which makes leading a tube through much easier, because it prevents the end from getting tousled. Now my following task is demonstrating how to lift the walls. I mean, there's no transition like we perform in normal weaving. In our case, we just lift this tube of the base a bit instead of laying it horizontally. The level of lifting depends on how sharp you'd like the transition to be. If I'd like the transition to be smooth, I'm going to lift the tube of the base little by little in each following row. In case I'd like the transition sharp, I'm going to lift them in a sharper way and wrap the tubes with the same very coils. But in my case I'm going to make a transition smooth, that's why I'm starting to shift the tubes of the base from the plane up little by little. And continue weaving this way. In the first row the lifting is not clearly seen yet. The lifting is going to become more visible in a couple of rows. Take a look please, here it is not clearly seen yet, while on this item you can see the gradual lifting very well. You manage it with your own fingers with no special base or form used. As a result you get a lifting like this. Well, it is where I'm going to finish the introductory tutorial. In the next tutorial I'm going to show you the way I create different shapes, as well as the way I finish a row in this technique.